I thought holding my family together meant sacrificing myself, but after 15 years of contempt and watching my daughters flinch at their mother's voice, I finally realized love shouldn't feel like walking on broken glass every day. I'm not asking for advice. I'm not looking for forgiveness. I'm just saying it out loud so I stop gaslighting myself. After 15 years together, I'm leaving my wife. We were the kind of couple people held up as proof that high school sweethearts can make it. Back then, I felt like the universe had handed me a cheat code, same music, same dumb humor, same plans for the future. At 17, I told her I wanted kids someday, too, that this was non-negotiable for me. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said she pictured the same thing. I believed her. I believed everything. The early years glowed. She, let's call her Jade, could turn a bad day into a private joke in 10 seconds. My folks adored her. Her mom sent me pictures of Jade as a toddler like I was already family. At 18 I bought a thin promise ring with a tiny stone and gave it to her under a street lamp after a football game. She cried and pressed her forehead to mine and whispered, "Someday." I went home convinced I'd just fast-forwarded to the best part of my life. Then we went to different colleges, 3 hours apart. That's where the friction started, small at first, sand and a hinge. She insisted I visit every weekend. When I said I couldn't afford gas, she said, "Other boyfriends make it work." She said, "You're not trying." She said, "If you loved me, you'd figure it out." And so I did. I skipped meals, borrowed money, sold my Xbox. I'd show up with an overnight bag and a smile and she'd act like I was late to a shift. I kept telling myself this was just a tough patch. I kept saying real love requires sacrifice. But the sacrifices were one-way tolls. When I asked her to come to me, there was always a paper due, a friend's birthday, a sorority thing. I learned the speed limits on that highway by heart. I learned how shame feels when you pretend you're not counting the dollars in your account while a person you love tells you your effort is ordinary. After school I scraped enough together for a down payment on a small place, peeling paint, crooked porch, my name on the deed. When a contract fell through and the bills outpaced me, I locked up the house and slept in my old room at my parents' place for a couple months, grateful and embarrassed at once. Jade would throw it at me like a stone. "You're a grown man. Your parents are still floating you?" The way she said man carried this heat, contempt dressed up as advice. In those conversations I always felt 12, standing in a kitchen I didn't own, apologizing for not being someone else. Still, I decided I wanted to marry her. I planned to wait until I could do something big, string lights, hidden photographer, the whole algorithm. But then her 26th birthday rolled around, and I got this ache in my chest that wouldn't let me wait. I bought a modest emerald ring, she once said green was her color, and proposed at the end of her birthday toast in her mother's backyard. People clapped. Jade stiffened. Later, when it was just us, she looked at the ring like it had insulted her. "You should have waited if this is all you could do," she said. "It's embarrassing." I told her I was saving, that this was the start of something we'd keep building. "I don't want to start," she said, "I want the thing I deserve." We still got married. I told myself that ugly moments happen under stress, that weddings turn sane people into editors. But the planning was a dress rehearsal for our future, Jade in the director's chair, me the quiet checkbook. "I'll handle it," she'd say, which meant I'd pay and stay out of the way. Every time I offered a preference, music, food, venue, she swatted it down. At our reception, I remember sitting at the sweetheart table as our friends danced and thinking, not for the first time, that somehow I was watching our life through a window. Then, the twins. 2 girls with serious eyes and fists like little starfish. I didn't know your chest could hold that much love without splitting. I didn't know sleep deprivation could be a joy when the reason is a diaper change at 3 a.m. I named them in my head 100 times before the ink dried, walked them in circles in the dark humming off key, cried at the first belly laugh like a fool. In every version of the future I'd written for myself, this was the part that made all the early chapters worth it. Jade didn't feel that way. At first it was subtle, a sour tilt to her mouth when the girls reached for me, a joke about too much estrogen in the house. Then it sharpened. She said she'd wanted a boy. She said she didn't recognize herself. She said they only calmed for me because I coddled them. "They look like you," she said once, and the way she said you felt like a diagnosis. I'm not naive. Postpartum depression is real. I tried to meet her there with compassion and structure in every article my eyes could scroll. I set up therapy appointments for her. She agreed. She didn't go. I offered to trade shifts at work to be home more. She said I was smothering. When the girls cried, Jade would stiffen like a statue and say, "Make it stop." There was a night I came home and found them hungry and soaked, red-faced from crying so hard they'd exhausted their voices. Jade was in the next room scrolling on her phone, volume up, eyes far away. I took the twins to my parents for the weekend. I thought space would help, that we'd reset. When I told Jade this couldn't happen again, my voice shaking, hands shaking, entire body begging her to hear me, she said I was dramatic, she said I was trying to paint her as a monster, she said motherhood wasn't a performance for my approval. I wanted to believe her and not believe my own eyes. Weeks stacked into months. There were better days. There always are, that's how you get stuck. She made pancakes for the girls and they got syrup in their hair and laughed, and I stored that day in my chest like a jewel. Then a bad day would slam down, Jade snapping shut up at a toddler, Jade slamming a door hard enough to rattle picture frames, Jade shaking her head in disgust when one of the girls spilled water and then smacking the table so hard both kids flinched. I started recording the dates and details in a notes app. If you've never written down the worst moments of your home life in case you need to prove they happened, I don't recommend it. It changes the way walls sound. The insults at me never stopped, they just changed flavor. When I suggested counseling together, she said, "You're the problem. I'm not paying someone to tell me I'm right." When I budgeted to the penny, she called me cheap. When I took the girls to the park, she said I was playing hero. When I tried to talk about how scared I was, she rolled her eyes and told me to man up. Everything that hurt came with a side order of contempt, and if I dared react, I was too sensitive. Contempt is a slow poison, you only realize how sick you are when you try to stand. I kept staying because I loved the person I once knew, because I believed in vows, because I thought a better chapter was coming if I just turned the page more gently. The truth that finally landed wasn't loud. It didn't arrive in a fight with broken plates and dramatic exits. It was quiet. One afternoon, the girls were coloring at the coffee table, soft sunlight on their faces, and Jade stalked past and muttered, "Why do they always need something?" Like our children's needs were personal insults. My younger twin looked up at me, searching my face to see what that meant. Something inside me unlocked. This could not be their normal. Their first language could not be tiptoeing. I talked to a lawyer. I talked to my parents. I talked to 2 friends and said the words I hadn't let myself say: "If it comes to it, I will take the girls." I bought a cheap external drive and slowly gathered things I might need: photos, notes, copies of missed appointments, texts that I never wanted to reread but couldn't risk losing. I looked at rentals during lunch breaks. I kept a duffel in the trunk with pajamas in tiny sizes and a threadbare stuffed duck that both girls fight over. I also tried, really tried, one last time. I sat Jade down at the kitchen table and said I was drowning. I said I loved her and I loved our family and I needed us to address the way we speak to each other and the way she speaks to the girls. I said I'd go first in therapy, alone, together, whatever it took. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and told me I was manipulating her. She said I was weaponizing her mental health. She said if I was so unhappy I should leave. She said it like she dared me to. You know that feeling when the last card is pulled and the whole cheap tower collapses without a sound? It was like that. The decision wasn't a storm. It was a clear sky. I'm leaving. Not as a threat, not for attention, and not to teach a lesson. I'm leaving because my daughters deserve homes where laughter isn't an interruption, where mistakes don't make adults cruel, where love is the default setting and not a reward for pleasing someone's mood. I'm leaving because the little version of me who sat on the edge of a twin bed counting dollars in his bank app before driving 3 hours to prove his devotion has done enough proving. I'm leaving because staying has turned me into a man who documents harm and calls it hope. Tonight I packed their backpack with 2 sets of pajamas, 3 favorite books, and that duck. I tucked their drawings into a folder, slid the external drive into my jacket pocket, and wrote a note with the details I never thought I'd write: where we'll be, the times she can call, the name of the mediator, the appointment already booked. I kissed each girl's curls and whispered that none of this is their fault, that daddy loves them, that tomorrow we'll make pancakes and they can drown theirs in syrup if they want. I stood in the doorway for a long time with the lights off, the house humming familiar, the air shaped like our old life. I tried, I really did. I tried past the point where trying became a disguise for fear. There's a moment right before you open a door where you can still pretend you might not. Then you turn the knob anyway. I'm at that moment. I'm turning the knob now. And if the only person who believes me is me, that's finally enough.